In this tutorial series, we are going to look at how we can use After Effects to create an app screen animation mockup. This is the sort of thing that you would do to show a client some prospective work that is yet to be coded. In this way, we can sample some of the interactivity without having to do all the coding necessary to get there. In this example, I already have a simple app designed. It's a simple activities log. This app does 4 particular functions, as you can see here. What I'd like to do is create an animation for each one of these 4. Each one of these animations is going to be placed inside of a longer animation featuring all the functions of the app. In this tutorial, we're just going to do the first one of these, the add activities function. Let me show you what that is going to consist of. I'm going to come over to my layers panel over here, and I'm going to open up a layer here called the activity selection sequence. I'm going to turn that on and scroll over to the left. You can see here that our app starts off with just a header, a footer, and a blank background. This icon here represents our click. As we click on the plus button, an add activities list descends, allowing us to choose an activity. When that activity has been selected, it is now added to our activities log. This is the interactivity that we are going to simulate in After Effects. Now, as you already probably know, in your app development, being organized is very important. If I open up my layers panel, again, you can see that I've been very organized with my layers. This is something that both web developers and animators really need to be comfortable with. Now, as you proceed with this exercise, you can use these files, or if you have an app that you've developed, you can use that. I'm going to turn off that layer and close my layers panel. Now, you may not have developed your graphics in Adobe Illustrator, and that's fine, but I do recommend assembling the graphics that you have in a layered Illustrator file. As you'll see, it'll make the importation of your graphics into After Effects much easier. I have another video that talks about how to easily create a layered Illustrator file for importing into After Effects. I'll put a link in the description below. I'm going to jump over to After Effects and show you what this animation is going to look like. You can see we have a click, our add activities list comes in, and then we click on jogging, and then the jogging section enters. Nice and simple. What we're going to do is we're going to recreate this animation using the assets from our Illustrator file. You can follow along with those Illustrator assets, or you can use the assets from your own app. We are going to bring this file into After Effects, but let me first of all talk about a very important thing. This file has been set up at a particular pixel dimension. If I click on this storyboard tool here, you can see that my width for this panel is set to 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels in height. This is the standard pixel dimension of a high definition screen. This is pretty standard for most animations, but be aware of where your final animation will end up. For example, if it's going to be a looping GIF on Instagram, for example, then you're going to want to set this up as a 1080 by 1080 square. For our purposes, I'm going to be setting this up in such a way that it's going to be something that could be used on any screen. So 1920 by 1080 is recommended. Let's open up After Effects, and I'm going to come to the File drop-down menu, and I'm going to come to the File Import File option. I'm going to come to the Participation UI folder that you've downloaded, and in the footage folder, I'm going to select Participation App UI Layers, and there is our Illustrator file with all the layers. I'm going to click on that once. Before I import it though, I'm going to come here to Import As, and I'm going to make sure that I click on Composition Retain Layer Sizes. Once that's done, I'm going to make sure that nothing else is clicked here, and I'm going to select Open. You can see now that this file has been imported into my project panel on the left here. This folder has all of the Illustrator layers, but again, remember what we want to open is the composition item here by double clicking it. And there is our layered Illustrator file opened up here in After Effects. Not all the layers are currently visible, as you can see that some of these are not. For example, our goal setting sequence and our activity selection sequence, you'll notice are not only not visible, but they were set up originally in the Illustrator files outside of our artboard. And as a result, they're not even visible if I turn them on. So I'm going to select both of these and delete them. I'm going to resize my layers panel just so I can see the rest of my layers a little bit more easily. I mentioned the importance of being organized. Before we do any animation, let's be very organized with our layers. You notice I've named each one of my layers, but that's just the beginning. Here in After Effects, I'm also going to color code my layers. I'm going to want to color code all the elements that are going to be animated together to make it easier for me to proceed. For example, there are a number of layers here that are always seen together. The iPhone layer, the footer layer. I'm going to hold down my command button on the Mac, control button on the PC to select that layer. I also want to select the header layer, again, holding down the command button. If I press my spacebar, I get a hand so I can scroll down to the bottom here. The next layer that I'm going to select is this background layer. All of these layers are going to be visible at all times. As a result, I'm going to change their color by coming over here to this color code tag and click on it once. And for each one of these layers, I'm going to select the red layer indicator. So I'm just going to bring my header underneath the footer layer like that. The next section I'm going to group together are all the gesture and navigation graphics. I'm going to select tap, hold down my shift button and select gesture and clicks, and that will select all the layers in between. And I'm going to make all of these a different color as well. I'll let you decide. I'm just going to choose yellow for mine. I have a couple of layers here that are used for setting goals, and I'm going to give them their own color. These add activity layers, we are going to be using those in this animation. I'm going to make all of those peach. There are two rewards, one purple reward, one blue reward. The jogger section, walker section, tennis section. Oh, this activities log also needs to be created red because that is also going to be seen at all times. That's all I need to do here. By organizing my layers by color code like this, it'll be easier as I proceed to choose my layers. Now there's just two more things I want to do before we can begin our animation. This particular composition that we have right here is essentially our storeroom. It's where all our graphics are kept. What I want to do is create a new composition that will allow us to create the add activities interactivity animation. Let's do that by coming to the composition drop-down menu and selecting new composition. I'm going to make sure that it's set at 1920 by 1080 and a duration of 8 seconds exactly. Before I say OK though, let me just come here to where it says comp 1 and I'm going to change that to add an activity. I say OK. Now this comp is where we are going to be creating our animation for the add activity interaction. But recall, there are other interactions that I want to animate later on. This is going to require yet another composition in which to assemble all of my interactive animations. So I'm going to do that right now by coming to the composition drop-down menu and select new composition. And this is going to be our master composition. This is going to be the one that is going to collect all the other animations. Now that I have these two additional compositions created, I'm ready to begin the animation process.